Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member, and of course to the Secretary for coming today. And thanks to the new administration and Republicans in Congress, the border is secure and our homeland safer. Unfortunately, in places like Colorado, sanctuary states and sanctuary cities and their soft on crime policies are continuing to endanger communities. In Colorado and Denver today, homicides in Denver are up 50% compared to this time last year. Colorado's got 2% of the nation's population, but 10% of the human trafficking in Colorado. And we're one of only a handful of states in the country where overdose death rates are going back up again. And so, Mr. Secretary, we know who's responsible for a lot of that. It's the cartels, the foreign terrorist organizations, the organized criminal enterprises. And that's why I support policies to identify and dismantle these organizations that are bringing death and poison into our communities. And so my question to you is, Mr. Secretary, you mentioned it earlier, deporting the worst of the worst. How are you prioritizing immigration enforcement resources on these terrorists, criminals, drug dealers, gangbangers, and how are sanctuary policies impeding your efforts?
Sir, there's a couple answers in this one. First of all, the 287G program, where we partner with local law enforcement and state law enforcement, really helps put the pressure on these illegals. It's where we reimburse a local community, the state, for equipment, for hours that they put in to help go after the worst of the worst. We don't see that cooperation in throughout Colorado because of Governor Polis's policies. We also have a huge issue with the lax banking policies in the state banking system with the drug trafficking. It creates a safe haven for money laundering to take place throughout Colorado, and we see some of the worst places in Denver. When you do that, you encourage that kind of behavior. When you become a sanctuary city, you don't just become a sanctuary city where you're housing criminals, but that criminal activity pushes out from that state into surrounding states and surrounding areas, and then you attract more of that criminal activity because the individuals feel like they're safe in there. They don't have to worry about local law enforcement looking at them because they're a sanctuary city. They know they'll be pulled over and be released. Even when we ask for retainer on some of these individuals that have serious criminal backgrounds, they release them constantly. And I know it's not the state police or the local law enforcement. They want to do their job. It's the local officials and your governor that's handcuffing them from being able to enforce the rule of law.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I wish we could have 287G programs in Colorado, but ruling Democrats explicitly outlawed those. We've talked before, you know I was a cop in the Denver metro area for a little bit over a decade, sergeant, lieutenant, so not only was my responsibility to get the bad guys, but it was to preserve those professional standards within the agency and make sure we're following the law. And so during your confirmation, I was very pleased to hear you say that under how you run the department, that ICE would need judicial warrants unless there were some of the exceptions, but they would need judicial warrants to go into homes to make arrests the same way I needed when I was a cop. Can you just talk very briefly about how you're implementing that requirement in the department?
Yes, if we're going to be entering a business or a house and we're not in pursuit currently after the individual, we want a judicial warrant to go in there. There's two things that happens, right? It covers the officer that's walking in the door just in case something takes place. It also assures us that we have the authority to do so what is deemed necessary to get the fugitive we're after. So we want to make sure we have cover, but there is exceptions. The administrative warrant can be administered if the individual is avoiding us by running through places of business, running into an apartment complex, going through a door. We feel like they're a danger. We've got to enter in there. We don't have time to stop. If we're going to knock on your door at 3 o'clock in the morning, though, we'll have a judicial warrant.
Glad to hear it. There's Supreme Court approved exceptions to the judicial warrant. You got to learn them in police academy. It sounds like that's exactly what you're referring to. Exigency, fresh pursuit, things like that. Final question to you. I got a lot of constituents in my district, farm workers, youth ministers, nurses, grocery store business managers. They've been living and working legally in the U.S. for decades with visas, but because Biden threw the borders open and flooded the immigration system, a lot of these folks that are legal are having trouble renewing their visas, and so would love to work with you to be able to find ways to help expedite these approvals so that we can keep the American economy working and keep those employers working. Last 15 seconds to you.
We would applaud any assistance you could give us, any assistance that Congress could give us by passing new policies to help us streamline this would be wonderful. But Unfortunately, we haven't upgraded our immigration's, true legislation since 1959, and it needs to be updated today.
I'm out of time. Yield back.
Gentleman